A major Chinese hack has infiltrated 3 major US telecom systems, and it's worse than anyone knew. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. There's a predictable rhythm to the news cycle surrounding major US elections, and that frequently includes one or more October surprises, bits of shocking news that come out right on the eve of the election, and then disappear in a puff of smoke once the election is over. So why am I not surprised that in late September and early October, news came out that US telecom wiretap systems had been targeted in a massive China-linked hack, only for it to quietly slip unnoticed into the ether a month later. The hack came from a group called Salt Typhoon by Microsoft experts, which sounds like a dope name for a Pokemon attack. It was big news for a while in October, especially since both presidential 2024 election campaigns were reportedly targeted. And the timing is a bit odd, since according to the Washington Post's Josh Rogan, the breach was first detected in August. But the truth is, the hacking effort is far more pervasive than has previously been reported. And it says a lot about how the Chinese Communist Party operates. So, just how bad is it? The US believes the hackers are linked to Beijing's Ministry of State Security, the CCP's spy agency. Vice President-elect Vance actually spoke about the hack on the Joe Rogan podcast.
One thing that came up, by the way, in that, and I'll go back to your question, is about the grid. One thing that came up in that is the way that they hacked, and it was also President Trump's phone apparently too, the way that they hacked our phones is they used the backdoor telecom infrastructure that had been developed in the wake of the Patriot Act. And this is something that I think should be a much bigger part of the controversy over the Patriot Act is when the Patriot Act was passed, like AT&T, Verizon, they had to build all of these systems so that if somebody got a FISA warrant and could hack into a particular phone, the infrastructure actually existed. What I've been told is that that infrastructure was used by this Chinese hacker organization called Salt Typhoon, and that's how they got into the Verizon network, and that's how they got into the AT&T network.
They used the infrastructure, it makes sense. If anyone knows how to make infrastructure crumble, it's China. According to anonymous officials talking to Washington Post's Josh Rogan, they have burrowed inside this infrastructure and likely continue to have access to the system. So they burrowed in and are still there, causing havoc. Are these hackers or termites we're talking about? Either way, it's not good, because millions of mobile phone users on the networks of at least 3 major US carriers could thus be ongoingly vulnerable to Chinese government surveillance. Oh no, the CCP could be spying on us through our phones using something other than TikTok? The officials told Rogan that targets identified by the intelligence community include senior US government officials and top business leaders. Senior Intelligence Committee Chairman Mark R. Warner, a Democratic Virginia senator, described the hack as being much more serious and much worse than even what you presume at this point. It's one of the most serious breaches in my time on the Intelligence Committee. Worse than I presume. I presumed it was unimaginably horrible. Wow, turns out I'm an optimist. Rogan was also told by a victim of the hack, who was briefed by the FBI, that right now, China has the ability to listen to any phone call in the United States, whether you're the president or a regular Joe, it makes no difference. This has compromised the entire telecommunications infrastructure of this country. Any phone call, you say? Just to be safe, I think every American should start and end every call with "Taiwan never belonged to China." So to sum it up, one China expert put it this way. Salt Typhoon's recent infiltration isn't just another hack, it's a high-stakes escalation. It showcases China's growing cyber sophistication and relentless ambition to undermine US infrastructure, laying bare the vulnerabilities in our systems. So how did China get so cyber sophisticated in the first place? How did China's hacker army come to outshine America? Well, according to the Washington Post, the hack was spurred by a series of elite hacking competitions hosted by the Chinese government. Once, the CCP had to deal with a bunch of anarchic, anonymous hacking groups in China that pretty much did whatever they wanted. Those random hacks could have badly damaged the CCP's image or ties to foreign government. Well, further damage. But now, it seems Beijing has seen the value of exerting more control or influence over groups like these. by having them work as contractors with their intelligence and government agencies. According to the Washington Post, China's government since around 2015 has sought to harness civilian talent through state-sponsored war game hacking competitions that have served as talent farms. In these competitions, hackers claw their way through brutal simulated security systems and situations, and the best of the best are put to work for the CCP. Researchers are finding links between top firms involved in Beijing's competitive state hacking circuit and sophisticated hacking groups that have targeted groups in the US and other countries. The CCP realized the great talent of its own civilian hackers and decided to tighten its grip on them by exploiting them for its own nefarious purposes. For example, in 2014, there wasn't a single domestic hacking competition in China, according to Eugenio Benicasa, a senior researcher with Zurich's Center for Security Studies. Now, a decade later, there are around 50 per year. Many of these are sponsored by the Chinese police and state security agencies and bring in thousands of elite hackers. I don't even know if you can actually tell who won, because with that many hackers around, I just assumed the results were hacked too. And Benicasa's recent report on these revealed that most such competitions rely on either Beijing Integrity Technology Group or CyberPeace as their providers for the simulated environments, known as cyber ranges. Quick tangent, Chinese organizations with peace and integrity in their names would be like describing P. Diddy as abstinent and prude. The Beijing Integrity Technology Group is already under FBI investigation for its links to an earlier hack by a group called Flax Typhoon, which sounds like a dope name for a Pokemon high in fiber. Two Chinese cybersecurity officials who attended state hacking events in China said these generally focus on different scenarios, both defensive and offensive, such as simulating attacks on large infrastructure projects, police and military systems, and even healthcare. The Chinese government also introduced a law requiring companies to report hackable flaws directly to the government. According to a report by Microsoft, the law, which went into effect in September 2021, marks a first in the world for a government to require the reporting of vulnerabilities into a government authority for review prior to the vulnerability being shared with the product or service owner. Strangely enough, after the law went into effect, the number of Chinese hacks detected by the US went up. Go figure. Which leads us to where we are right now. In the middle of a hack no one seems to know how to fix that affects three major US telecom companies. Washington and the affected telecom companies have been pretty quiet on the incident, saying they're continuing to investigate. And officials said in early November that it was not expected to affect the election. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party has denied that it sought to influence US domestic affairs, and has always denied launching hacking or cyber attacks on any country. Then explain this chart, China. Explain this chart. The CCP's typical go-to response whenever they're accused of anything, including hacking, is, "Nuh-uh, you did." But with this hack, something has changed. According to the Washington Post, while sophisticated Chinese cyber attacks are on the rise, it's the first time Beijing is known to have targeted presidential election candidates directly. US authorities have said China, unlike Russia or Iran, has taken a more neutral stance in the presidential race, but has increasingly sought to influence down-ballot races, targeting critics of Beijing in state and regional elections with online misinformation campaigns. Pretty clever, since a lot of Americans pay very little attention to down-ballot races. That also checks out very well with China's other efforts, some recently revealed, to intimidate Chinese dissident communities abroad, spy on them, and even spy on local government aides. So how did all of this go so wrong for the US? Well, the US did try, mainly by keeping Chinese technology out of the telecommunications sector, which is smart, because that would have made the job much easier for the CCP. That'd be like putting an app on your phone known to be controlled by China and collecting data. That'd be crazy if millions of Americans did that, right? The problem is that as the CCP got better at hacking, all they needed to do was break through the back door, so to speak. A back door that was intentionally put in by the US government in the wake of 9/11. This cyber attack may not have interfered with the US election. because after all, it seems pretty common knowledge that Xi Jinping and his cronies would not want Trump back in the White House. But who's to say they won't try to influence another election in the future? Or worse. Beijing could try to use its infiltration of the telecom networks to cripple the US should a war break out. Information collected from average Americans could be used to spread misinformation or blackmail. Wow, Warner is right. It is worse than I thought. Apparently after 12 years, I haven't been hard enough on the CCP. And then there's the threat of surveillance. The situation is still under investigation, so maybe there isn't much more for telecom networks or the US government to say right now. But Americans need more information on this ASAP so they can protect themselves. This is one October surprise that cannot just disappear into the background. Something will need to be done, or it'll just keep happening over and over again. Because unless it has better defenses, the CCP will always find a way to make infrastructure crumble. And before YouTube kicks you to a random video, check out the latest episode of my show Deep Thoughts While Gaming, and about why being a Sigma male is actually pretty lonely, according to the new game Mario and Luigi Brothership. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.